Today marks the 7th year since I started developing Adrorium. It was and still is quite a journey. For this anniversary I want to show you the first versions that nobody knows of, the versions developed in the first 6 months that precede the first public itch.io build. The first iterations look very different from what you know Adro to be, and in the last years many things have changed, especially the graphics. I'll only go over the main features for each update, so I'll skip bug fixes and background tasks. That being said, I am Beholder, a hobbyist game developer, so let's get started. Starting up with version 0.0.1, and yes, that is the default Unity background. In this version, press 2 and you can build blocks. Version 0.02 brought some new updates to the UI, well, if you can call that UI, and new textures for the blocks. Now there's a main core a generator that looks like this, and then you have whole blocks that you can build wherever you want. In version 0.03 there is a new plane, and also after you build the generator you can only build a hole adjacent to the generator, and also deletion works fine now. 0.04 is not that interesting. I just added some first-person camera mechanics, which I can switch between. In version 0.0.5 there are new images for the UI, and on top of that you can now load ships. So I've saved this to load. Yep, there it is. In version 0.06 I added several blocks, and I was mostly prototyping on how materials work, how physics works, and also in this update there is the first ship ever. It's called Riroa 1, and in further updates I made some refinements. In the first deck there's the control bridge, there are some rooms to the left and right, more rooms, and on the second deck, which is supposed to be engineering, there are gonna be the tanks, the harder, and in the front there's gonna be the cargo zone. Also, one more thing that I added for this update is a very primitive means of driving the ship. In version 0.1, the biggest one so far, I finally decided on a name. Up until now the game was called Voxel Tool, but from now on it was going to be called Adrorium. Also in this update I deleted the ground, added a nicer skybox, added randomly spawned asteroids, and remember the ship that I was talking about earlier? Now it's finally in the game, and with all blocks placed. In the first deck there are some unused rooms in the midsection, crew quarters, bath, lounge area, medical station, hydroponics, and on the second deck there's engineering, a airlock, and the cargo bay. Also on these updates I made it so you can spawn all the blocks. In version 0.1.1 I added the ability to interact with blocks, and I also added a crosshair. In 0.1.2 I added a new lighting system. I also added the ability to drive the ship. I added it back because it was broken before, and I also added a version to the top right corner and tweaked the debug texts. In 1.03 I added the concept for the PDA when you press tab, and also added a lot of models. Version 0.2, another major version, and as with any other major version, there is a complete rewrite of the codebase. In this update I added a new lighting system that's easier on the eyes. I took all the models that were previously in the cargo bay and I converted them into proper blocks. New options for the quality, well, they were built in Unity, so it wasn't that hard. A new building system, just press B and you can click and right click to build and delete, a lot more easier to use than before. And if you haven't noticed yet, there's a new ship. Yep, let's take the tour. In the back we have the crew quarters, the bath, the hydroponics, the lounge, life support, there's an airlock on the middle right, and in the front there's, as usual, the bridge, with a lot of new consoles, but none of them are implemented, basically just placeholders. So we have the sensors console, the main computer console, power relay console, main and auxiliary power, life support, stores and internal atmosphere, thermal management, propulsion, weapons and shields. Next we have deck number 2. In here we have weapons and propulsion, ship computer, main and auxiliary power, and shields. And in the front there's the main cargo bay. It has 2 access ladders to the third deck. Let's get to the third deck. In the third deck there's 2 access corridors that lead to cargo bay 2 and 3, each of them having a fighter inside. And in the midsection there are 6 escape pods, and some nice balconies to observe the contents of the ship. In 0 to 1 I added a very basic third-person camera drive mode and some basic animations for some blocks. 0.3, another major version, complete with a full code rewrite and a brand new ship. But first the UI. We have a brand new escape menu, texting option, belt, stats, debug option and FPS box. Something new is the fly-by-wire driving modes, complete with firing, even if it's just cosmetical. And last but not least, it's the brand new ship. So let's take the tour. I think you're already familiar with the bridge, which now features 2 escape pods. On the starboard we have the crew quarters with a bath and the lounge with hydroponics. On the right we have past the airlock, more ship hardware, and in the midsection we have the life support and liquid storage. That was deck 2. Deck 1 features even more ship hardware, the reactor, and in the front there's the main cargo bay. Now it even has 3 openings and a fighter. 031, new restart option, new drive UI, new asteroids, previously they were very unoptimized, and the brand new drone, if I can find it. Yep, there it is. 032, toggleable light, new player movement, and implemented the first console. Connect, extend cannons, open coolant, separate induction, and power the weapons. Change some sliders, and now you can fire. In version 0.3.3 I finally implemented the main power console with its own set of buttons. Let's start up. And also the engines console, without which the ship doesn't move. The last thing is the shield. There's a new texture for it and a new shader. Version 0.4 starts with a complete code rewrite, a brand new ship, Reroa 4. Now consoles have the ability to synchronize states if you build more of them, the stats are fully implemented, and the new inventory system. Now you can retrieve and store items in cargo boxes, and you also have a backpack and a belt. Back to the ship, let's take the tour. So we have the more compact bridge, and in the front there's a glass cupola. Immediately to the right there's more ship hardware, life support on the left. In the midsection we have the cargo store area, escape pods, the power plant in the back, and the crew quarter still in the back. Also there's an airlock. Version 041 brings a new main menu. You can for the first time save and load the game, change the options and read some descriptions. In this update I also changed the way you drive the ship. Now there's a first person camera and you actually deal damage with ship weapons. Other than that I optimized some blocks and I also optimized player movement. In 042 the main feature is I started adding multiplayer for the first time. It's a bit buggy, but hey, it's the first implementation. In 043, I refined the multiplayer system, I added the ability to name yourself, I added a new player body, the one that I'm actually using right now for my avatar picture, and made the asteroids spawning clusters rather than random. In 044, I redesigned the menu from scratch, added a lot of options for the new game panel, displayed some statistics for the player, and added several graphical options. Overall, the main menu looks a lot better. On top of that, I added a star image, I added visual effects for the ship weapon. Now you can also damage and destroy shields and disable drones. On top of that, you can even loot them. In 045, I polished the saving option, and I added item counts so you can have multiple items of the same type in the same slot, like in any other game. In 046, I finally switched to Visual Studio from Mono Develop. I implemented texting for multiplayer. I updated the player movement, it's a lot more fluid now. And I rewrote the inventory system to support item drag and drop. I previously implemented sorting in a previous update. In 047, I updated the build system to work with any ship rotation, and I also rewrote a large portion of the item code to allow for partial stack taking or dragging. And these were all the closed updates before the H.io release. Hey, do you want to land a ship on a planet yourself? If so, the game is completely free on H.io and on Steam. Give it a try. If you like this clip, consider subscribing and leaving a thumbs up, and if you have time for one more favor, wishlisting Adrorium would help me considerably. Thank you, and transmission over.